Stefon Diggs was traded a few weeks ago, but the first time that Josh Allen had to sit down and ask a whole boatload of questions about something that ultimately shouldn't concern him that much anymore. The trade for was at the beginning of their OTAs last week, and I'll be honest with you, I was kind of surprised by the sheer volume of questions he got about it, and I had expected him to be diplomatic. But even with that many questions, he never really looked like he got sick of the questions or anything. But it was at least 8 questions, possibly 9. I would say 50% of the questions he got were about Stefon Diggs. And look, he's not going to say anything inflammatory. I thought that there were some kernels that spoke to or hinted at maybe where the Bills are right now, potentially maybe where the relationship was it was time to end. As Lovie Smith loved to say, sometimes divorce is a good thing. But also the compliments that he gave to Stefon Diggs, some of it was pretty effusive in praise, and I think maybe focusing on what Josh Allen chose to compliment about Stefon Diggs is promising if you're a Texans fan. So though you Bills fans who came here via the algorithm, I'm Seth Payne, played for the Texans long ago. Now I do sports radio in Houston. So this is looking at everything through a Houston lens. Please feel free to correct me on anything in the comments, because I know what it's like when an outsider, even though I'm from up there originally, grew up a Bills fan from Rochester, but obviously we're looking at it through the filter of people in Houston. So there's bound to be a few things wrong, or at least differing perceptions of things. The first question was just simply about his reaction to the loss of Stefon Diggs. Let me pull this up here, since I, like a bastard, didn't actually get
your reaction to moving
death of somebody that was close to my wife that I could talk to you guys about at the end of this. But first, Josh Allen and his initial reaction to the loss of Stefon Diggs.
Just what is your reaction to moving on from a guy that you've had a lot of success with the last 4 years?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely hard to part ways with a guy that's been very instrumental in our success here over the last 4 years. And again, I can't thank him enough for when he came in and how hard he worked and what he taught me along the years. And obviously, I wish we can keep everybody. We've made a lot of changes this offseason, lost a lot of veteran leadership, Steph being one of them. I guess that's the nature of the business. And going into year 7 now, it's just kind of is what it is. I don't get paid to make changes on the team. I get paid to be the best quarterback that I can be and try to lead the guys on this team.
And the part about leadership there I thought was interesting, because he gets mentioned a couple more times in terms of the leadership role, and he was a team captain. I think the picture that emerges of Stefon Diggs really over the course of his 4 years in Buffalo, and remember it was 4 years, was one of like the classic guy who's super, super fiery. And sometimes it comes out in the wrong ways, or sometimes it's tweeted about cryptically. And it ran its course in a lot of ways, but especially when he talks about the situation the Bills are in right now, where, look, it's a hard reset of a season, and they lost Micah Hyde. They talked about Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane just went on and on about Micah Hyde. He sounds like, I got to get to know Micah Hyde because he sounds like a hell of a guy. But the loss in leadership they had, the loss of their center, the loss of Stefon Diggs, there's a vacuum there. But also the picture that emerges is, man, this is a reset of a year for the Bills. And maybe they surpass expectations, kind of like, not in the same way, but the Giants a couple years ago, they were supposed to be in a hard reset year, and they ended up making the playoffs. I think the Bills have more talent than that Giants team did, but it's going to be a reset of a year. And Stefon Diggs, if he made it through this reset, I don't think would be any less disgruntled than he is right now if it is an ugly season. And certainly he'd be a year older. So it was the right time to just pull that Band-Aid off in a lot of respects. Next question was just simply, have you spoken with Steph?
Have you spoke with Steph since the move was made?
Yeah, I shared a text with him and got one back, and just thanking him for everything that he did for me, and always have a spot in my heart for him. And I always love that guy like a brother, and wish him nothing but the best.
Yeah, I love him like a brother. You didn't have to say he loves him like a brother. That's a little bit more than cliche, and he's mentioned that a lot. They call each other their brothers. I think the big thing there is that Josh Allen has had more communication with him than we have as Texans fans. we haven't gotten Steph yet. There's one of the things Nick Caserio got a little bit contentious about the other day when Jason Bristol asked if there was going to be a press conference. I'd like to hear from him. Next question was simply about the perception of discontent. I left this question in so you could hear it properly.
There was a sense that of maybe just outside speculation. Is he happy? Is he unhappy? Why do you think that seemed to linger over the team for as long as it did?
I mean, to be honest, I couldn't answer that question. It's it's something you may have to ask him at some point. But again, I think with this, there is a lot of opportunity for our guys that are in that room right now, and as an offense, and really as a team, to evolve and grow and become a new version of the Buffalo Bills, and to come together as a team over the course of OTAs is what we're doing right now. And, got a lot of time before we kick off the first game. So a lot to learn from, even going back and look at some of the concepts that we're doing right now and just cleaning those up. It feels, obviously it's frustrating to look back and see some of the stuff that was on tape, especially for myself, but excited to address those and move forward and get better.
Look, I don't think that, as he said, you'll have to ask. Maybe you could ask Steph about some of this stuff. I don't think Stefon Diggs is going to dish about any kind of personal issues or anything. He's had a chance to before, even if it wasn't like in a fiery environment or anything. When he was on the Von Miller's podcast, he kind of brushed it off, and I think that's what he'll likely do. I think that if you go back to the Bengals game, when that was the first huge eruption, or at least when the world kind of took notice, the Bengals in the playoffs in the 2022 playoffs, there was some misses by Josh Allen there, and it was in bad weather conditions. But then you go into this year, and Stefon Diggs is on pace for 1,600 yards. Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator, takes over and really does a lot of things that are really good for the offense and Josh Allen in terms of diversifying and making Josh Allen into a more complete quarterback. But in doing so, he still wasn't like a quarterback in full. I think for Josh Allen to really genuinely become, I think, what he's capable of being, it's one of these where you have to take a step backwards before you take 7 steps forward. And I don't know, again, if Stefon Diggs was going to be cool with being a part of that experiment, after kind of being the catalyst for a lot of change in 2020. It was, to use the old rental car analogy that I like, which is like, you could be an awesome driver, but when you jump into a new system or you try to learn new things, just like the way you jump into a rental car, it takes a little while to get comfortable with it. Like, oh, awesome, it's got adaptive cruise. I'm not ready to use the adaptive cruise yet. I'm just trying to figure out how to turn the dome light on, or turn the high beams on. So I think that's where it made sense. Like, this is what, like a lot of people have said from the beginning, this is probably a better circumstance for everybody in Houston, and it's probably a better circumstance for everybody in Buffalo, despite whatever hurt feelings there are all around. Oh, hold on a second. Oh, well. You guys are going to have to get dim lit, Seth, for a little bit here. Next question. What did Steph mean to you over these 4 years? And how do you feel about your confidence in your ability to offset the loss?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, he meant a lot. You look at the statistics, they don't lie. Numbers don't lie. So, but like I said a few minutes ago, it's an opportunity for those guys that we have in our room, bringing in guys like Curtis and Mac, and having Khalil and Dalton and Dawson and guys that have been in the system for a while that know how things go. And within the system, like, anybody can get the ball at any given time, and these guys are very excited for that. They're working extremely hard. It's good to see these guys here. Again, get to know some of these younger guys better, and looking forward to getting to know them as best as I can, so we can use that on the field.
Yeah, as far as anybody getting the ball at any time, again, there were some moments last year after Joe Brady took over where I think, it's always hard when you don't know the actual scheme and you don't know what the reads are and what they're doing on any specific play. It's hard to say, oh, the ball should have gone to Steph. There were times, I think, where Stefon Diggs was open, and by play design, it should have gone to Steph, but perhaps Josh, again, trying to learn how to drive that rental car for the first time. was a little sticky in some of the reads. And it was better overall for the team. More guys got involved. They scored more points. They went 6-1, but there was just a little bit of a disconnect. And in some respects, I don't even mean this as shade towards Josh Allen whatsoever. I think there's CJ, by virtue of what he knew coming into the NFL, he's just way more advanced than Josh Allen had been coming into the NFL. And then I think CJ, by being in this system and the way Bobby Slowick teaches and approaches and installs things, CJ in some respects is more advanced, I think, in some of the concepts or expectations of what to read post snap. And Josh actually talks about his own struggles with some of this going forward. And like, Josh is awesome. It's just two different perspectives in two different environments they've had. I think in some respects, like, Josh Allen gets to continue on some of his growth that maybe got halted for a little bit in Ken Dorsey's offense. Next question. What did Steph mean to you? You see how many questions there were about Stefon Diggs? What did Steph mean to you over this last 4 years? Oh, no, we already did that. What are some things you've learned about dealing with? What are some of the things you've learned through your relationship with Stefon Diggs?
What would you say are some of the things that you learned from his time here with you?
Well, again, I think, the concepts that we were able to put in, the concepts that we were able to run with him, his mentality, the way that he attacked each and every practice, was very infectious, especially for the young guys seeing that. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, and that was another part of it. Like, the whole fiery. Like, we use that word a lot, right? He's fiery. He's very, very fiery. And like, the imperfect comparison sometimes perhaps would be Draymond Green. Different people, don't get me wrong. Stefon Diggs does not have the penchant for violence that Draymond does, or nut kicking. If that's what if it's even violence, whatever Draymond practices, it's a whole lot of nut kicking. But Stefon Diggs not a nut kicker, but he's going to express his emotions. I honestly, I don't know what to say other than that. Like, I hope that the cryptic tweets are done. Like, if there's one thing, anybody knows this from spending any time on social media, everything gets amplified on social media. Like, you can have, because there's people watching. There's people watching. If there's anything I can impress upon anybody Stefon Diggs isn't even young anymore. Anybody who's younger than 31, apparently, like, just like when you have an argument with an audience, there's too much ego involved, and there's no going back. So when you've got a young quarterback who's trying to develop and become a leader, and you've got a fiery wide receiver who just feels certain ways about the way the offense needs to run, don't give whatever conflict there is there the fuel that is a live audience, because, man, it makes everything so miserable.
Yeah, I would say this.
Oh, next question. After I get off my social media, as I talk to you on a form of social media about the evils of social media, do you have any regrets with Steph, given that you reset the record books but couldn't win the big one?
The regret is not winning one. And obviously I played this game, and the other 52 guys in that locker room played this game to win Super Bowls. And we want to bring one very badly here to Western New York. And that's my number one goal. That's all I'm working for and working towards right now, is figuring out how and what it takes to get us over that hump and bring one back. And we're going to work tirelessly until we do.
Yeah, and that's where, like, again, the ships passing in the night, or the just having two different agendas. Houston's in a position right now where they have a quarterback on his rookie contract, and they can be super aggressive and spend a lot of money bringing in veteran players, where Buffalo's at the end of one of those little mini windows, and one of these guys asked a real good question about how a lot of quarterbacks, if you last long enough in the league, you're going to go through a few generations of teams. Like, you're going to have a team with a core group of players, and then suddenly over time, or gradually, and then all of a sudden over time, you've got a whole new set of guys. And in a lot of ways, this is Josh Allen, I think, really entering that second phase of his career, where they've got to restock the cupboards at wide receiver, swap some people out on defense and everything. And I think it makes sense from their team building perspective that Stefon Diggs, by the time they realistically get back into that Super Bowl window, if they have to take a hiatus this year, it was Stefon Diggs wasn't going to have much guaranteed money left on his contract. He might be more disgruntled already. It just made sense. What did you learn about navigating relationships through your time with Stefon Diggs? I think I left the actual full question in here because this might be the one where Josh didn't really answer the question. He sidestepped it a little bit. Here's the question.
That's probably a hard question. I know this is probably a hard question to answer in this setting, but what did you learn about managing or navigating relationships based on your experience with Steph over those 4 years? Because the perception was that there was problems with you guys for the last 2 years. You turn on ESPN, that seemed to be like a continuing narrative. What did you learn about that now, especially going into your 7th year and maybe taking even more of a leadership role?
Okay, so at the very end, he said taking even more of a leadership role, and he talked about leadership a couple times. I think I've only listened to this once, one time through. I think he did. I think Josh pretty much just answered this like as a general question about leadership, but I might be wrong. So pay attention for me.
I mean, again, I think this is, as a franchise quarterback, guys that get to their second contract, right? You're not getting paid just to be the quarterback. You're getting paid to be the best leader that you can be. The best quarterback obviously comes with that. So leadership looks like a lot of different things. You wear many hats in this building, and sometimes, it's not the easiest thing, especially when, I feel like I'm one of the guys, and sometimes I have to remind myself that, you're looked at a little bit differently. Guys are relying on you a little bit more and understanding that. And again, but trusting coaching staff, trusting your teammates around you, and having that type of humility where it's like you're able to say when and where you're wrong. And I think that's, what we've learned over the last few years, not just with him, but with other receivers and with other players as well. It's everybody's got a different type of relationships. Everybody has something different that makes them tick. And then again, I think we're using this time right now to utilize and find what does make these guys tick? What is their reason for playing this game? And just diving deep into that relationship and getting to know them on a deeper level, to try to utilize that and to help push them become the best that they can be.
I think the one thing there, he did mention Steph. I had missed that the first time around. But I think he mentioned it specifically in terms of humility and when you need to admit that when you're wrong. And I don't think that, and again, I think a lot of this stuff is blown up in writ large just because, they've lost to the Chiefs in the playoffs and because of everything else surrounding it. But I think that Josh Allen, you have to remember, is still a young quarterback when Stefon Diggs came and really injected a lot of life into his game. But also, at the same time, Josh Allen had fixed his mechanics after that Texans loss in the playoffs. He did a lot of work on himself mechanically, but Stefon Diggs was a huge part of taking him to the next level. And I think that there may have been conflict between those two where Josh Allen either didn't know when he was wrong or didn't accept responsibility for when he was wrong. He has a different personality to where it's not going to be as public or as volatile when he does it. And maybe this is just him being a good dude and accepting responsibility because that's what a good guy should do. But whatever it might be, I think there's probably way more to it than we'll ever find out about. And yet at the same time, I think when you don't find out about it, people's imaginations run wild. And ultimately, I think this was just people being on different pages at this stages in their career. 2 more questions, one specifically about Diggs. But then the one after that, I think, is one that sheds a lot of light on exactly perhaps how it was with these guys and then maybe why it'll be better with CJ Stroud. So first, the question about any lasting memories of Stefon Diggs.
Given
What was
the
it like?
pictures that we had of you and Steph being on your back for the kids' Sports Illustrated thing, and during celebrations on the sideline, and also the tough times when he was yelling at you, what will be your lasting memory of Steph here in the book?
My lasting memory of Steph will be the receiver that helped me become the quarterback that I am today. And, I'll always thank him for that.
That could be interpreted. That could be interpreted as as an aggressively short answer, except that you see, and that honestly, when I saw that clip standalone, it was one of the first things I'd seen from this press conference. I was like, huh. And then you realize that was the 7th or 8th question that he was asked about Stefon Diggs. I wanted to put in a little clip there of Stefon Diggs yelling on the sideline. And again, like, you can hyperanalyze these things a million ways and be wrong about it, but just as something to consider, there on that read, there was a disconnect between how Josh Allen read it and how Stefon Diggs read the play that Stefon Diggs was mad about. And, by by Josh not acknowledging Steph there, you could say, hey, he's just, defusing the situation. Or it could be, all right, has he genuinely been accepting responsibility for some of it? Because there were some bad throws in that game too. And it was snowing, I know. But you come to this year too, even after they had changed what they were doing offensively, and Stefon Diggs was catching just a boatload of just screens and short yardage stuff. Like, the majority of targets after Brady took over were a lot of these dink and dunk variety, but then they would try to take shot plays to Stefon Diggs. And Stefon had a few drops at times, but there were also some wild old school Josh Allen misfires at times. There was a disconnect there. And I think just by Josh Allen, I think accepting responsibility for it, it's more than just being a good sport. I think when you listen to his answer on this one, it's what are your feelings going to a year with Joe Brady, like having the entire year to prepare with him as the offensive coordinator?
Just going through different concepts and the little tweaks here or there, starting my eyes here, progressing through here instead of maybe being at starting here. Like, it's a little technical, but talking to their quarterbacks, it's like, why weren't we doing this before? Even going back to my first years here, it's like there's certain concepts where, like, I was so adamant on this one guy, and if it didn't work out, it was like, all right, go make something happen with your legs, and hopefully get into a spot now where it's like, all right, if this guy's not here, that means this backer's taken away. There should be a window right behind him here for something else coming in. So little things like that. I'm looking very forward to it and excited about it.
So that's as basic as it gets. And he's oversimplifying it, I think, for the benefit of just not getting too technical. But yeah, I think there are times, just as like any other quarterback, like Eli Manning, is a big one that jumps to mind when he had to learn how to start distributing the ball more. And it helped probably to get rid of Shockey at that point in his career. And if I recall, he was a little further along in his career too. It wasn't like it was his first or second year. Deshaun, as much as we're stuck in a bad position as Texans fans, because as bad as the DeAndre Hopkins trade was, and it was, but Deshaun had to get better in some respects because he had to distribute. He couldn't just be fixated on DeAndre Hopkins and then use his athleticism to get out of it. And I think that's where Josh Allen, in trying to relearn how to drive this automobile, it might have been, again, given all the other circumstances as well, it's a good time to rip off the Band-Aid and realize, like, okay, yeah, it's got to be a genuine democracy when it comes to, democracy is not the right word, but you got to spread the wealth to everybody, and you just got to throw it to the open guy, but it's also got to be the second and the third option. You got to be able to see things on different levels. And I think that's something that, like, CJ is already really good at. Like, CJ sees the game in a way that makes veteran and retired quarterbacks freak out, because he's just seeing things faster and understanding them better than rookies do. And that's where I think when Stefon Diggs got mad in Buffalo, I think a lot of the times it was when, the ball was supposed to go to Stefon Diggs. There were times where he's open. He's the guy. He's the X-ISO, like whatever it is, like he was the guy on that play and the ball didn't go to him or the ball was misthrown or whatever. And did he handle it properly as a complete teammate? No, but I don't think you're going to have as many of those potential issues arise, because CJ is just, he's going to be pretty damn good at distributing the ball. And also like all of the other stuff about just being on a 1-year contract, everything else. Let's see. Low risk, high reward. If he doesn't fit or mix, good luck on the rest of your career. I wonder if the Chiefs' structure of dropping the number 1 is the wisest for the Bills. Guess we will see. Yeah, and a lot of it, like, look, remember, 2 years ago, it was Pat Mahomes has to figure out how to live without Tyreek Hill, and he did pretty damn well. That's when you saw that's when you saw Mahomes rise to that next level. That's when Patrick Mahomes became the guy that didn't just rely on the serial athleticism of Tyreek Hill. Not that that's what he was doing completely, but you know what I mean. But he also had a really good tight end, just as Dalton Kincaid is a burgeoning, really good tight end for the Bills, and they're gonna have to try to, like, yeah, Josh Allen has to. This is his Pat Mahomes year. This is the year that he has to really become that guy. CJ Stroud is a really good spot that I think that he's got a GM and head coach that decided to go all in on a young quarterback who's still on his rookie contract. And it's not, I think with some of these guys, like with Tua, you almost had to go all in just to see if Tua was actually any good or not. With CJ, you already know he's good. It's that, no, you're going all in because, yeah, we're going for it. So it's a pretty good spot to be in. So thank you to the Colts and the football gods and whomever else. One of you guys had a bunch of you guys had good points. There was one that caught my eye. Rick had said he wasn't enough of a leader to kick the other cook out of the kitchen. Yeah, I think CJ's got a little bit more of an edge to him in a good way than Josh. I think Josh, I like, remember Josh, that whole dynamic too of like Josh being, the perception being that Josh was put over by Stefon Diggs getting there. And, Stefon Diggs kind of having like a big brother vibe over Josh Allen. I think, who knows on a personal level how much that really mattered, but sometimes those things have an outsized effect sometimes. I just don't think takeaway is pacifier. Timu ad. I don't know what that means. I think people are not looking at how impactful Slowick, Draw Johnson, Case Keenum, and Ben McDaniels are going to be. They know what CJ needs going into year 2. It will work. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I have very little concern about Stefon Diggs having any kind of issues here with the Texans. I really don't. I'll be surprised if he does. I don't think there's going to be a true number one. I think week by week, game plan by game plan, you're going to have guys that, the thing about Sean McDermott talked about this later in his press conference when he was asked the question about like not having a true number one wide receiver. You go in as a defense and the first thought you have in game planning is, okay, who do we need to take away? What do we have to take away? The thing is, if you got multiple good receivers, there's going to be some teams that are better versus Nico Collins with their defense versus this offense. There's going to be some other teams that are better set up to take care of Tank Dell and Stefon Diggs, but really struggle against a big guy like Nico over the middle with his run after the catch ability, all of that. That's the beauty of it. It's going to be a week by week thing. I think sometimes if you had to worry about Stefon Diggs' ego at all, and I'm saying then it might be placated enough just by the fact that every few games, if he has a monstrosity of a game, if he has 12 receptions for 250 yards, Noah Brown was able to get 300 plus yards receiving in 2 successive weeks on this team. Noah Brown. So I think Steph's going to have a few big games, and at least, and if he's a free agent at the end of the year, then look, a lot of other teams will be able to say, hey, look at this. Well, he was on this team with Nico Collins and Tank Dell, but he still had 1,000 yards receiving in that one mega game or something like that. Real quick, because I said it at the beginning, and I know I've got quite a few coaches or just people who have coaches in their lives. So my wife's high school coach, her basketball coach and her softball coach passed away. She just found out about it right before I went on. So I ended up talking to my wife about this for a little while because I've never met this lady, but I feel like I know her because my wife's told so many stories about her. And just she was an incredible coach. And she had such a huge impact on my wife's life. And to the point where just the lessons she learned from her growing up, I learned lessons from Miss Larder, was the coach that died. That just, man, if you coach, even if you're coaching youth league, you can have just such an incredible impact on these kids. And, and it can go in the other direction too. If you're a fiery person, you have a tendency to bitch a lot as a coach, or to just tear into people. that has that is a huge effect on kids too. And I just always feel like if you have the choice and you have the ability, there's plenty of times that you can be fiery. But man, the love that you show these kids, it really, like, my wife's 53 years old, and I broke down and cried with her because I feel like Ms. Larder affected me. Like, that's how much of an impact she had on all these women that are my wife's age that are going to be going to her service sometime this week. They're going to take I think they're gonna take a spec bus. They might take an actual school bus from the school up to Ms. Larder's funeral. So that's it. That's my little word of advice for the day. Just keep in mind how much of an impact you have on these kids. And everybody have an awesome day. I'm Seth Payne. For those of you new to this, I played 10 years in the NFL. Now I cover the Texans and on Sports Radio 610. I'm all getting emotional now. So everybody have an awesome day.